Tim.
With me, two former prosecutors, Jill Wine-Banks, who served as a special Watergate prosecutor, Seth Waxman, who was a federal prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C. Lots to talk about. So, Jill, Democrats think Republicans are pushing for new investigations because they're just trying to distract from the president's potential legal issues, like the ones laid out in the Times. Do you buy that argument?
I do. There can be no other reason for this. The investigations that they're pushing have been held for many years now and have cleared everybody involved of any wrongdoing. There is no reason to continue any investigation of Hillary Clinton or the Clinton Foundation or anything else. There is nothing there. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. And we should focus on the president who is in office now and who is endangering us by his every action.
Seth, are they trying to discredit Robert Mueller? Are they trying to intimidate him or members of his team? And if so, will it work?
Well, they're clearly trying to do those things. Interestingly, there's been a lot of talk about obstruction. And the way I see this, there's actually a much more powerful way that Bob Mueller can use this evidence. And that would be as direct evidence of a conspiracy. The conspiracy between the Russians and the Trump campaign to win that election. And so we can view these acts, the Sessions acts and the other ones that we're hearing about now, in that context. And just for a little background, a conspiracy is simply an agreement between two or more people to engage in illegal conduct and then acts in furtherance of that conduct. But there's a secondary principle that's very important here. If those co-conspirators take actions to protect the conspiracy, enforcement or conceal the activities or steps that they're taking, that is also direct evidence of the conspiracy and can be charged as such. So let's use the example of Jeff Sessions. He's asked not to recuse himself, and what does Donald Trump say? I need you here to protect me. Protect me from whom? Well, of course, law enforcement. And that is a classic conspiratorial statement that would fit perfectly in a conspiracy charge. And I think that Bob Mueller is looking at this evidence not only as potential standalone obstruction charges, but also as what are called overt acts in furtherance of a conspiracy that could include Donald Trump and all the other players that we've been hearing so much about.
By the way, a side note, but an interesting one, Pete Williams and Jeff Bennett, both of NBC, are now reporting that a Justice Department official tells them that AG Jeff Sessions was not invited to attend this weekend's gathering at Camp David, although 23 other top administration officials were. Asked about it, a White House official said the press should stop using a long-planned meeting to take cheap shots at the Attorney General. Back to this, the Times report, Jill, says Mueller also got handwritten notes from Trump's former chief of staff, Reince Priebus, and they show that Trump talked to Priebus about how he had called Comey to urge him to say publicly that he was not under investigation. Is that important, at least in the context of the fact that the White House was consistently trying to discredit Comey?
Well, of course, he is trying to discredit Comey and also discredit Mueller. And the fact that you have any corroboration of the testimony of Comey, who has said he was pressured, is very helpful to his credibility, that is, to Comey's credibility, and will help the case for sure. So it is very important, and it's interesting that he got the information from the chief of staff at the time.
Seth, Trump has repeatedly denied, of course, obstructing justice or colluding with the Russians. Let's just remind folks.
No collusion. No obstruction.
I can tell you, as the president has said, there's no collusion, there's no obstruction.
Look, there has been no obstruction, there has been no collusion, there has been leaking by Comey, but there's been no collusion, no obstruction, and virtually everybody agrees to that.
Yeah, the New York Times, and you were just talking about this, Seth, the New York Times makes the argument that at least on what we know publicly, and that's all we can go on, right? I mean, you guys may have better understandings of what Robert Mueller may have, or at least informed speculation about it. But they suggest that at least based on what we know publicly, obstruction is definitely at this point the stronger case than collusion, building that case. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think there could definitely be made a case for obstruction. But again, I come back to what this case is about pre-election. There's no obstruction pre-election. There is a conspiracy. It's not a collusion. It's a conspiracy under the law. And if that conspiracy took place and was successful and caused Donald Trump to win the election through the help of the Russians, the acts that take place after that election can be obstruction, but they can also be acts in furtherance of that conspiracy. Again, if they take action that's designed to protect the conspiracy from discovery, and look at the example we can find. I mean, the firing of Jim Comey. If you fire the lead FBI agent, in this case, the director of the FBI, you are doing that to, in theory, protect the conspiracy from further prosecution. And so again, I think that the way Bob Mueller is looking at this, and I've dealt with many complex conspiracy cases, in the first instance, he's trying to prove up that conspiracy, and these obstructive acts not only could be charged as separate acts, but also first and foremost included in the conspiracy and loop in a whole group of people that had knowledge and intent to participate in that